Hi, welcome to week 3 for research and education. It's Dr. Henkel here, and I am glad to start this week out, and I hope y'all are having a great week. The first 2 weeks have been really good, and I enjoyed giving y'all some feedback on some of y'all's first assignments. And without further ado, I'll just go ahead and lead us in a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for today and all the blessings you've bestowed upon us. And I pray that we will have a heart for you, Lord, as we learn and go about our days, that you would just guide our steps and just put special people across our paths, Lord, that you would have us to be able to witness to or to help, Lord. And we just love you so much, and we thank you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So it's always important to look for people that you can witness to, and we do that. My husband and I like to pray for those special divine appointments. So, yeah. Anywho, we're going to go ahead and start in chapter 3, reviewing the literature. So that's a big part of doing a research study. It takes a lot of time, but I really like how our book Creswell has broken it down into some more easy steps for us to be able to do so. Our learning objectives are here in our form on Moodle. After completing this week, you'll be able to define what a literature review is and why it's important. And there are 6 steps that we do when we conduct a literature review. So you will learn those. And you will also be able to go through different research journal articles and abstract them. It's just like summarizing them to be able to categorize and figure out themes with those articles and be able to place them into your journal research paper. You will also be able to create an annotative bibliography entry form, which is kind of like what I was just talking about. So those go hand in hand. So right here you have the chapter 3 PowerPoint. So you can download that. Hopefully you've already read chapter 3 and you're able to understand a little bit more what I'm about to talk about. So let me go ahead and get this up, and if you have yours printed out, go ahead and, I did this last time, figure out, one second, yeah, I don't know why I always forget where they have that. There we go, sorry. Okay, so go ahead and have this out in front of you, and then as we go through it, you can write your own notes on it, ask a question. If you have a question about something, just jot it down, and then you can always get in touch with me and I can elaborate more. So I've already discussed those. There's 6 steps whenever we do our literature review, and it's just a great way to summarize what other researchers have written on your topic. So once you've chosen a topic, this is when you go and you figure out what is out there on that topic, what studies have been done already. And then you're going to be able to organize those into different subtopics. And I'll go into great detail on how you go about doing that. There's different documents that you're going to need to do your literature review. So let's just go through this. First, how does the literature review differ for quantitative and qualitative studies? So your book goes into good detail on how those differ and how they're similar. And there are differences. Quantitative, there's a need for the study. It's mentioned at the beginning. So whenever you're writing your paper, the literature review in a quantitative study starts at the beginning. And it's going to compare other studies together. It goes into great detail of what's been out there. Now, qualitative, it will go into some detail in the beginning of the study, what other literature is available and out there, but it won't have have it too much in the beginning because it doesn't want to distract the reader and have them think a certain way. It's mostly mentioned at the end of a study so that you can have an unbiased analysis, because there is more of your opinion, because you're not statistically doing different statistical analysis with a qualitative study. So you don't want to put your biased opinion in the beginning. You're going to kind of just touch on it in the beginning. You'll do your study, and then you'll have more of your literature review towards the end with a qualitative study. You're not going to predict findings with a qualitative study like you would in a quantitative study. You would predict findings. And so there's 6 steps whenever you do your literature review. Okay, so here's the first one up at the top. So identifying key terms. The second step you'll do is you'll locate the literature, and there's different methods and ways that you can do that. Thirdly, you evaluate and select literature. Then you organize the literature, sorry for that down there, synthesize, and then write your literature review. So sometimes you might hear me call it a lit review. That's just literature review. Okay. Here, let me get to my notes. 6 steps. So the first step is identifying your key terms. You might want to start out with just creating a working title. So this is maybe something you think that you might end up giving your research paper a title as, but it does not have to be the title. But from that title, you're going to have to choose specific words that are going to describe your study. And you can in turn use those words to use to conduct your literature review. Maybe it's like 2 or 3 words that you can use from that. You can also figure out different short phrases and jot those down, and that might be some key terms that you would use to do your research study. It's just like how you would Google something. So if you're wanting to find out pizza near you, you're going to put pizza near me, and then it'll generate a list. Same thing when you're conducting your literature review, when you're in the databases. Just key terms, write them down, and you'll be able to search through. Okay, so same thing here. You can use what other authors have done. If you're reading a few reports and you see some of their keywords, you're like, hey, I'm going to search with that word. I didn't think of that. That's awesome. Also, this is one you're going to get real familiar with, is the ERIC database. So let me get to that. So here it is. So let's say, like, my dissertation was on in-school suspension, OSS, and DAEP. So if we just want to do, there it popped up, in-school suspension. So those are my keywords, because then there's out of school. So that's why I have the in there. So I'm going to click search. And so here we go. I have some academic articles in the ERIC database that are on in-school suspension. Like this one says predictors of academic outcomes associated with ISS. And there's one of OSS. And so I would go through and I would choose some of these. And right here it says that it's peer reviewed. We'll get into that later, but that's what you're going to be wanting, is peer reviewed articles. It's just good quality, and I'll tell you why when we get to that little section. So I'll keep this up to maybe go back to in just a little bit. Okay, so also you can use different table of contents in a literature journal and maybe find keywords that way to do your study. So there's a lot of different ways, and so I'll help you with that. But this is a very good one, so always have that one bookmarked. Okay, so the second step is you're going to locate the literature. So just like I just showed you with the ERIC database, that's one of the places that you would go to go find your resources. You're not going to use all the literature. There's going to be a ton out there. You're going to weed through and you're going to pick out the top candidates that you think are going to be most beneficial to your study because it's going to provide you the information that you need. Um, I do not want y'all to get used to using anything on Wikipedia. That's not scholarly material. It's just put out there on the public. You don't know who put it up there. Just because it's up there does not mean that it's a sound source. So I don't even go to Wikipedia. Peer-reviewed articles is a must. That's when you're writing your research report and then you have your peers edit it, and maybe and then they help you and they make sure that your methodology is correct, you've conducted enough broad enough and narrow enough topic for your lit review, and they've gone through and they've read all of it and they've given you feedback. And so that's what it's reviewed by other experts in that area, in that field of study. So you want those experts to be able to read your article and give you feedback, because that's before you publish it. And so that's the steps of a peer-reviewed article. They have given it to another person that's in their field, that's an expert, and then they bounce ideas off of each other and give improvement, and they make the edits, and it's top quality. So that's what you're going to be looking for. Um, da, 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 da. So primary sources are best. We're going to go into primary and secondary sources. It says that primary sources are summarized or reported by the author that conducted the study. So that's why we go for and we look for peer reviewed, and is it a primary source? So did the person that wrote the article, did they actually conduct the research? That would be primary. So you say check, yep, it's primary. If they didn't and it's just like a summary, somebody got this article, that article, and this article, and they just summarized it and then they published that, that would be considered a secondary source because they didn't actually conduct the study. So we want to lean more towards primary sources. So I hope y'all understand that. I'm sure y'all do. And so here's kind of a visual guide to that. And up here at the top, this would be your primary sources at the top of the triangle. This is just a model on how you can conduct your literature review. So if you start at the bottom, you have your secondary sources. So somebody summarized like an encyclopedia. That's considered a secondary source. So then you work your way towards the top to get towards the primary sources. Okay, so your books. Then you have journal articles, index publications like conference papers, your dissertations, early stage material. So this would be your primary source, more towards the top. So that's just kind of a visual guide of that. Now, whenever is this still, okay, so this is still the second step. You're locating your literature. One great one is EBSCO, and I can show you that also. That's a great database. It's just like the ERIC database that I showed you. So ones that I've used often are ERIC, EBSCO, and definitely Google Scholar. I've done that too. I'll have to show you where you can search and it will just be Google Scholar. So dissertation abstracts are often found in the ProQuest 2017 database. So these are just some of the databases that you can use. Our next step, step 3, you're going to evaluate and select the literature. So you're going to think, so far, what have you done? You've identified keywords that you're going to use to conduct your literature review. And we all know what a literature review is. It's just you're going to read other articles that have conducted studies on your topic. So you figure out keywords. And then next, you've located your resources. So that was step 2. So you've gone to those different databases, you found them, you save them, you print them out. I always print them out. Make sure you have access to them because if they're not going to give you the whole paper, you don't want to mess with it. So if you there's there's plenty out there. You shouldn't have to pay to get anything. So now what you're going to do, the third step, is you critically evaluate and you select your literature. So I guess I need to back up a little bit before we start printing and saving. So we're going to determine it if it's a good source or not. So has it been peer reviewed? You want to get both qualitative and quantitative studies and published journal articles. Um, so yeah, you've printed it, you've saved them. Just make sure that whenever you're critiquing them, that you've gone through that process and you're thinking, okay, is this going to be sound methodology? Because you don't want to include something that's not, because that just brings down the credibility and the value of your research. Okay, so just ask yourself, like I said, is it available? Can you print it? And if so, great, because you want to be able to get it again if you maybe lose your paper, you have it saved and backed up, and so you can go and do your reference list out of that, okay? Because you're going to need to know what volume it was in, what year it was published, what's the title of the paper, who wrote the paper, because whenever you go and you do your bibliography, those are all the information that you're going to have to use to do that. So let's see. Now we're on step 4. We're going to organize our literature. So this is good. You've gotten to a point with our research study. You're going to need, for our overall, like the big project, your research project, you're going to need at least a minimum of 15 primary sources. So I would do a minimum of 15, and you will read it, and then you're going to take notes on them. So you'll scan them, you'll read the articles, you're going to take notes on them. You'll do the same thing for a qualitative versus a quantitative research study. And what you're going to do is you're going to write an abstract with for each article. So an abstract is basically a summary of that journal. And you're going to write down, and you're going to include first the research problem. So that's right here on your PowerPoint. So these 4 things right here you need to include when you do your abstract for your 15 articles. You're the research problem, research questions or hypothesis, data collection procedure, and the results of the study. What did the study find? So basically, you're just summarizing the main points of your study. For this abstract, you only don't do more than 350 words. So write that down in your notes. Just it's not supposed to be a long essay or anything like that. Just 350 words. Get straight to the point. Pull out those pieces of information and write it down. So basically, you can go back and you can say, okay, this is about this. This one had this many participants. This one did this type of study. It was a survey, and you'll be able to see what they found and what research problem that they were addressing and what was their hypothesis, what did they find. Make sure you do not use the abstract that the author has created. So at the beginning of every research article, you'll see an abstract section, and that's a summary of their article. You are not supposed to use that as your abstract because that would be plagiarizing. So you have to write this in your own words. And don't be too brief. You need to make sure that you do include all the pieces there so that when you go back, you can quickly jog your memory. Oh, okay, that's what this one was about. So that's basically what you're doing. So you're beginning to synthesize the literature. And that brings us to our next step, is synthesizing the literature. So now you're going to try to organize all of these literature articles that you have. So you've got 15. So you're like, okay, I need to organize this. So your book talked about one way where you could do a T chart. And on one side, you can write the major concepts. Okay. And then the other side, the studies, the related studies that fit that major concept. So that way you have a table, like a T-chart table, and you can see real quick, that data from those articles. So the major concept, and then what studies fell into that category, basically. Um, you can, during this time when you're organizing, you're going to come across like key themes. What key themes did came out of doing the literature review? So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so as you take notes and you abstract the articles, you're going to start forming a conceptual picture in your mind on where your study is going to fit into all of the literature. Now you can visualize where your study is going to be. So that's why you have to map it out, okay? And during this, you're also going to be able to convince others why your study is important. So you've done the literature review, you can conceptually visualize where your study fits into all of this. And then through that, you're going to be able to let them know my study is important because, and you'll be able to fill in the blanks there. So this is a literature map example. So your book talked about doing a literature map to be able to quickly plug in your literature and where they fit in those key themes. So this is on page 95 in your textbook. And at the top, it has the topic. So let's say our topic is the need for teaching programs to be culturally responsive. And so here's your two programs: study abroad programs, US programs. Okay. So then you have all these key themes that you discovered, as you read all of these journal articles. So attitudes towards studying abroad. That was from King and Young, 1994, that article. So then you have right here personal insights of pre-service teachers. And so you have two different articles that fit under that theme for the study abroad programs. So you can quickly see which articles fall under each theme for the different topics for your research study. Okay. And so it's a hierarchical type of mapping. So it starts at the top and then it gets more descriptive and as it goes down, okay? So it's like a top-down model. Now, on page 97, there's an example of this. It's a circular literature map, and so it's kind of just like a circle map where you would compare two things, and so you can build it that way. Instead of a hierarchical type of map, you could do a bubble map, okay, like a circular bubble map, literature map. And so that would also help you figure out different themes. And so as you go write your literature review, you're going to be able to quickly see how all of these are interconnected, and you're going to be able to write how they're connected and the importance of them, what they found, their findings, and it's going to help you as a researcher to be able to say why your study is important, okay? Because that's what you want to do. You want to let them know my study is important because, okay? All right. Y'all are doing so good. I think y'all will get this. This is one of my favorite parts about research is doing the literature review because you get to go and see what other researchers have done, and it really helps hone in as a researcher to figure out, okay, this is important. I need to do this, and then you build that confidence there. So as you do this, so here's an example of that circular map. Okay, so it just helps you synthesize the literature when you're mapping it out like that. Instead of just reporting the data one by one, this article found this, and this article found that. Well, we want to try to find some overlapping. What were some of the themes here? Okie dokie, so we're almost done. This is the last step. It's step 6, writing a literature review is the last step. So you've found everything, you got your key topics, you found your articles, you mapped it out, You synthesized it, and now you're going to be able to write your literature review. Okay, so I gave each of y'all feedback on y'all's weekly reflections this week, and a lot of them I had y'all go, and I was like, okay, go on to page so and so, and I want you to get a tab, and I want you to write, like this one was paraphrases and quotations, and mark it on page 269. So as you're getting feedback from me, I want y'all to make sure that y'all are doing that, because that's going to be able to help you go back whenever you're having to figure out, like, how do I need to paraphrase it and write it on my paper? Oh, okay, that's how I do it. So go ahead and start getting it tabbed out. I have mine on the top also, so if you want to put tabs up here on the side, and it becomes really easy to use that way. Look at those reflections that I gave you on your weekly reflections, or your feedback, okay? And make sure that whenever you're, this is a research class, so the big part of research is being able to cite your sources correctly, because you never want to plagiarize. You always want to give credit to the other author. They did a lot of work to do that study, so let's make sure we give them the credit that they are owed. Like the Bible says, give honor to them that are due. Okay, so we want to make sure that we do that. That's biblical. So as we do that, you'll also be able to, when you're writing and you're giving summaries in your abstracts, and you're writing those, and then you go ahead and you write it in the literature review, you also have to do in-text citations. So that's like within the body of the literature review, and you quote something, you need to cite the source that came from. Or maybe you just paraphrase. You didn't even do direct quote. If you just paraphrase, you still have to cite that source. You have to give credit, okay? And then also you're going to use your APA manual to do your bibliography or your reference list. And that's where you'll have them alphabetically, all of your articles that you have included into your literature review, which is a minimum of 15. So whenever you write your literature review, you also want to include proper headings. So whenever you do your reflections, make sure, in any assignment in the course, make sure that you're using proper APA formatting. So give me proper APA headings, in-text citations, references. Just I want you to be able to do those on your own, so that you'll be able to quickly, because whenever you're doing your thesis or your research paper, it goes through a lot of editing back and forth. It's always like a work in progress until you get it to the final stages. And so it just helps you to be better, to be able to eye and say, okay, oops, I need to put a period here, or this needs to be in italics, or So check out that feedback and let me know if you have any questions regarding that, because I'm here to help you. Now, there's different types of literature reviews that you can do. There's a thematic review, and at thematics, they cite literature to document a theme, and they have major ideas. They're not just single details, so it's more of a theme. What theme did you find? And so that theme could come apparent to you whenever you're synthesizing and mapping out your literature, right? We've discussed finding those themes. Or another type of review is a study by study review, and that's a detailed summary of each group in a broad theme. So this would be more of a detailed type of a summary versus just having and discovering a theme within a study. Your concluding statement, whenever you're wrapping it up and you have your concluding statement at the end, make sure it summarizes a major theme in your literature, and it gives a rationale for the need of your study. So that's what you're going to end with. You're going to summarize it, what you found, what theme the literature was discovered, your literature review discovered, and then the rationale why you need to conduct your study. Okay? It's needed. So to recap, we have talked about the first thing that you do when you conduct your literature review. Let's see, what is it? Identify key terms and words, okay? The second thing, let's see if you can think. Okay, locate the literature resources. So the second thing you do is you locate it after you do the key terms location. The third thing, you determine if the sources are good and relevant to your topic. Okay, we need good, top-notch sources. 4, okay, this is when you're going to organize your literature review. So you're going to abstract it, you're going to create tables, you're going to have those themes come out, you're going to take notes. Okay. 5th, what's the 5th step? Okay, so that's when the conceptual picture emerges. You can see where your study fits in the literature. Okay. And then you're going to convince the relevance of your study in the 5th step. You're going to determine that. Okay. And then six, there. Then you get to write your literature review. Okay. So you did all this work, and now you're going to include in-text citations, um, end of text citations in your reference list. You're going to have proper headings. You're going to use your APA manual. And then it goes through a editing process of going back and forth, back and forth. Okay. So I'm going to stop that here, and then I will do a separate video that will discuss your assignments for the course. Thank y'all so much.